Today, we explore the story of John Morgan, a man who, in 1567, inherited the prestigious Mapperton House during the tumultuous Tudor era. Raised in a devout Catholic family, John found himself at odds with the changing religious landscape of England. His sister and brother-in-law, once faithful to Rome, had embraced the rising tide of Protestantism, a choice that sparked fierce tensions within the family. What began as a bitter dispute over faith soon escalated into a tragic act of violence. In a moment of rage and betrayal, John Morgan, driven by the intensity of the era's religious strife, killed his brother-in-law. This chilling tale of faith, family, and fatal consequences reminds us just how deadly the religious conflicts of the Reformation could be. This is Historical Crime Chronicles. Stay with us as we uncover the tragic events that forever mark the legacy of John Morgan and Mapperton House. Mapperton is one of the finest Tudor manor houses in the United Kingdom. It is well known for its beautiful gardens and great historical importance. It was first mentioned in the Domesday Book and was owned by the Sheriff of Somerset, William de Moyon. Later, the ownership fell into the hands of the Brett family, and the heiress married into the Morgan family. The house has changed and has been added to many times over the centuries, but the main house that you see today was built by Robert and Mary Morgan in around 1550. They had 4 sons, John, Christopher, George and William, and 4 daughters, with the eldest daughter being called Anne. Robert Morgan died in 1567. He left an extensive and complicated will. His wish was for his lands to be divided among his sons, with the exception that his brother Edward could continue to lease one of the properties. He also insisted that his wife Mary was allowed to remain at Mapperton, and £400 was to be divided between his daughters, providing they had their mother's approval before marriage. The main bombshell was that throughout the will, he repeatedly requested that John, the eldest and heir, would not interfere with his wishes. He obviously did not trust John and threatened that if he didn't accept the terms, he wouldn't receive any inheritance at all. John Morgan complied with his father's will and went on to inherit Mapperton. His sister Anne married Nicholas Turberville of Winterbourne in Whitechurch, and they had 5 children. Nicholas became High Sheriff for Dorset in 1578. As High Sheriff, his duties would have included being a representative of the Crown, which at that time was Queen Elizabeth I. He would have judged court cases and collected taxes. John and Anne's widowed mother Mary went on to marry William Staunton of Worcester near Wells in Somerset. Their marriage was a business transaction, and Mary went to live with her new husband. All 3 families, the Morgans, Turbervilles and Stauntons, were Catholic, which in the Elizabethan period was very dangerous. Queen Mary I had been Catholic and had burnt 300 Protestants at the stake during her reign, but times had changed, and now a Protestant queen was on the throne. As High Sheriff, Nicholas and Anne Turberville had to be very careful about their religion. They conformed with the Crown as this was much safer. On a cold day in January 1580, Nicholas had ridden from Winterbourne in Whitechurch to Wells. He had come to tell his mother-in-law Mary that his wife was in Dorset and was expecting their 5th child. That evening, Nicholas had supper with William and Mary Staunton and his brother-in-law John Morgan. The evening turned sour, however, when the subject of religion was discussed. John made it very clear that he thought that Anne had turned her back on her faith, and he suggested that she should be more like her cousin and not hide from her religion. John did not actually follow his own advice, but he expected his sister to do so. Tempers raged, and Nicholas stood up for his wife as they had no choice but to conform with the Crown as his job and life depended on it. In the heat of the moment, John Morgan stabbed his brother-in-law with a 6-inch knife. Nicholas died on the spot. He was carried to the chapel next door, while John and William Staunton were taken into custody. They were kept in a stone room on the bridge over the River Yeo. 9 days later, William was released, but John remained there until the end of February, when he was taken to trial in Chard. 3 miles from the courtroom was John Brett's house, who was the Sheriff of Somerset at this time. You may remember the name Brett, This is because the Bretts originally owned Mapperton before the Morgans. John Brett had married his daughter to Christopher Morgan, John's brother and the second eldest. He had been trying to reconnect the family with Mapperton for many years. The chief baron of the Exchequer and the sergeant stayed at John Brett's house the night before the trial started. It makes you wonder if he had any influence in the sentence, as his daughter was married to the second-born son. During the custody period, Anne Turberville had delivered a baby boy and had made her way to Chard to testify against her brother at the trial. There is no record of the evidence she gave, and as she wasn't actually there at the time of death, there may have been other instances when the two men had crossed paths. What we do know, however, is that John Morgan was found guilty and was sentenced to death. Before his end, he wrote 2 letters, one to his mother and one to his sister Anne. He asked his mother to forgive his sister and said that he had used his time on earth badly. His long letter contained the following words: "Bless and forgive the widow. I beseech you, my mother, even in these last words that ever I shall use to you. You are the root of her, and she is a reed subject to many winds. If she forsake her root, there is a great danger these times will make her wither. I used my time so ill that now my time is gone. Whoso abuseth his time shall have his time cut off." He then sent quite a religious and insulting letter to his sister, telling her to take the counsel of the Lord which loved thee. Now no more with natural love, for thou hast quenched it, but with a Christian love which thou canst not quench. First serve God thyself, and bring up thy children in his fear. The fear of God is a bridle to the disordered nature. Never lift up thy plumes again. Comfort thy heart, and live for thy children's sake. Their father, I think, would not have died for thee. Woe to those babies if you were gone. Thou hast the best-natured mother alive. I have written that she may love thee, yet thou art a simple woman in an open field. Trust thine own root unless thou perish. Written by the dying hand of sometime thy brother, by thee overthrown. John Morgan was hanged on the 14th of March 1580 on the hangman's tree at Chard at the bottom of the town. As he was a convicted murderer, all of John's estate went straight to the crown. Christopher could therefore not inherit his rightful home. However, Christopher didn't give up. When the indictment was written for all of John's fortunes to go to the crown, the clerk wrote down Dorset as that was the county in which the murder took place. However, the Mapperton estate was actually in Somerset. On this technicality, and after 7 years of trying, Christopher managed to get the estate back. The boundary between Somerset and Dorset has actually changed since, and Mapperton is in Dorset today. However, in the 1580s, this was not the case, and it worked out just right for Christopher and his wife. Otherwise, Mapperton would have been lost to them. John Brett must have been very happy indeed, because he finally managed to get his daughter back into the ancestral family home that they had occupied so many years before. The horrific murder by John Morgan was not the only murder by this name. His grandfather was also a John Morgan, and he actually killed a man called Antret Palmer in a pasture in 1533. He did not have the same fate as his grandson, however, as he was able to successfully plead that he acted in self-defence and received a pardon for his actions. The records for this event, unfortunately, are not very detailed. However, it makes you wonder if John was like his grandfather and had the same temper. Maybe his father Robert recognised the similar traits, and that is why he went to great lengths in trying to protect members of the family in his will. The story of Mapperton is one of beauty intertwined with betrayal, of family ties strained by the shifting sands of religious conflict. While John Morgan met his fate at the hangman's tree, the consequences of his actions rippled through the generations, shaping the future of his family and their ancestral home. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the past, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story. Join us next time as we uncover more fascinating tales from history. In next week's episode, we discover the bizarre and tragic way a respected reverend met his end. What started as an ordinary day turned into a shocking nightmare when an unlikely object, an old chamber pot, became the instrument of a deadly fate at the hands of his own son. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more historical crime chronicles. Thank you for watching. See you next time.